Welcome to this presentation on SENIF. My name's Amy Fleming and I'm one of the Early Years and Inclusion Advisors for the Borough. The aim of this presentation is to give you more information about SENIF, for you to know why you might apply for it, how to apply for it, and what sort of things you can use it to fund. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or your named Early Years and Inclusion Advisor. We're more than happy to help you and support you in an application. You might have heard of the term SENIF, or it might be new to you. So we're just going to give you some quick facts about SENIF. So it stands for the Enhanced SEN Inclusion Fund. And the reason that it's available is to ensure the inclusion of children with additional needs in early education settings. So it's available to 3 and 4-year-olds, no matter where they live, so they don't have to live within the borough, who are taking up any numbers of hours of free entitlement. And it's for those children who have lower level or emerging SEN, and those who at a later stage may require an education, health and care plan, also known as an EHCP, particularly if they do not receive targeted early intervention support. And it's also available for 2-year-olds. They need to be living within the borough, who have significant delays in one or more of the prime areas of learning. They don't have to be in receipt of the free early education entitlement. So who can apply for SENIF? Private or voluntary nurseries, nurseries attached to schools, maintained nurseries, and childminders can all apply. And it will usually be the SENCO or Nursery Manager who completes the SENIF application form, but this will be done in collaboration with other staff, other professionals working with the child and parents. And it's important to note that you must have parental permission to apply for SENIF. And when we're thinking about who can apply for SENIF, which settings, just remember to go back to the previous slide. So for 3 to 4-year-olds, they have to be in receipt of free education funding. For 2-year-olds, they don't have to be in receipt of the free educational funding. But it's important to make sure that your setting and the child fits into that criteria before you make an application to ensure that your time is not wasted. What to do if you are concerned about a child's development. Complete a baseline assessment in order to highlight areas of need. This is really important for you to do, because in the SENIF application, it asks for you to identify which age bracket, according to the EYFS profile, the child is working in. And it also clearly shows if there is a need in terms of development. So if a child is age 3, but they're working in an 8 to 20 month bracket, that quickly shows you that there's an area of need there. Also use formal and informal observations of the child in the environment. Again, this is going to give you evidence for your application about what the child's strengths and needs are in your setting. Talk through your concerns with the parents, and this is really key. You need parental consent in order to submit the SENIF application, and it's good practice to develop positive collaborative relationships with the parents. And sometimes this is going to involve having difficult conversations about their child's development. So our advice would be to start with the positive. Share with the parents what the child is good at. What are they succeeding with at nursery? And then ask them if they've got any concerns about their child's development. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But it's a good way to start that conversation. And then share with them the concerns that you've got and what you're putting into place to support that child. So identify what you think the child's needs are, and then put a plan in place for how you're going to support that child. This is usually called an individual education plan or an IEP, but can be known as an SEN support plan. And there are pro formas for these in the SEND toolkit, which you should have received. You can contact your early years and inclusion advisor for advice. Each setting in the borough has got a named advisor, and we're always happy to help you and support you with a SENIF application or any general inquiries that you have. consider applying for the additional funding. So today we're looking at the SENIF, but you might also consider applying for the DAF, which is the Disability Access Fund. And I'll go into a little bit more detail later on about this. Think about any referrals you need to make. And if you're not sure about the referral processes, again, please contact your early years and inclusion advisor. This might be that the child is not receiving speech therapy or physiotherapy and you feel that that's a need. So really thinking about the needs of that child and whether they're currently being supported. Continue to put in regular inclusive practice, but expand on this and make your interventions more specific. Ensure that you're consistent and that everybody in the setting understands the interventions for that child and how best to support that child's development. The application will ask you to show that you've completed an assess, plan, do, review cycle for the child, at least one, and it needs to have been for at least 6 weeks. So you start with your assessment, thinking about where the child is now and what the difficulties and the needs are. Then you plan. What do you need to put in place to support that child? Are there different activities you want to do? Is it to do with changing the physical space, using different resources? That's your plan. And then you do what you've planned. So you make the changes, you complete the activities, and then you review. So you think about the impact that what you've done has had on that child and their needs. Has it made a difference? Has it shown an improvement? Has it helped their development? And then you go back to your assessment. So is there anything else that we need to do? Do you need to carry on with what you're already doing? Do you need to continue to plan for that? And so the cycle begins again. And this is a really good way of showing what you've put into place, why you've put it into place, and the impact it's had on that child. And it gives you really clear evidence for your SENIF application. This slide shows the SENIF application process. So number 1, concerns are raised about the child within your setting. And we've talked about how you might identify those concerns. Number 2, contact your early years and inclusion advisor with the parent's consent to discuss the child's needs and any strategies that may be able to be put into place. You'll then introduce an IEP or SEN support plan and review this at least once. This is known as the plan, do, review cycle, and this needs to be in place for at least 6 weeks to see if that has an impact on the child's need. If the child is not making sufficient progress with the additional support that you've put in place, please complete the application form for the enhanced SENIF. This can be done with support from your early years and inclusion advisor if you would like. You then submit the application form for the enhanced SENIF, and this will then be looked at in the early years panel, and they meet every 2 weeks. So you should hear back in good time as to whether your application has been successful. If the application is successful, the funding will be released. Please note that you have to apply the following term if you want the funding to be continued. So it's a termly application that you need to make for this funding. If the application is unsuccessful, you need to continue to support the child with the plan, do, review approach, and you will receive support from your early years advisor if required. And then you can reapply the following term if the child is still not making sufficient progress. On the SENIF application, you will be asked to identify the child's strengths. So you need to think about what they're good at, maybe which developmental milestones they have reached. What are you proud of when you see them doing something within your education setting? Which area of learning are they succeeding in? Which is their strongest area? And don't forget to celebrate their small steps of development. So a child with emerging SEN needs might not be making the big developmental leaps that you see other children making, but they might be making smaller steps. And it's important to still identify those and to celebrate. And what do their parents say? What do they feel are their child's main strengths? What are they proud of? And just at the bottom here, there are some prompts for you to have in your mind when you're completing the SENIF application in terms of a child's strengths. So independently, what can I do by myself without any adult support? I have learnt to. So what's that child learnt to do since they've been in your setting? I can. So what can that child already do? I am good at. That's really going to help you think about their strengths. I have worked hard to. So thinking about those skills that they've had to really work at to achieve. I am proud of. Are there things that that child is proud that they can do, or proud of what they've produced? Having looked at the child's strengths and thought about what they're good at, it's now time to look at the child's needs. So where are the delays to their learning? Which areas are they struggling with? What challenges do they face? And how do these challenges affect them accessing the nursery curriculum? What do these difficulties look like in your setting? How are they presenting? Here again are some prompts for you about the kind of language that you might use in the SENIF application. I am unable to. I need lots of support with. I have difficulty with. I need help with. I struggle to. I cannot yet. I find it hard to. And really the needs section is very key for you to be successful in a SENIF application, because you need to show how that child is struggling. And the more that you know about their needs, the easier it is to think about what needs to be put in place to support their learning, to help them develop to their full potential. And we're going to go on later in this presentation to think about the sort of things that you might use SENIF for. So it's really important that before you think about what you'd like to apply for, that you know what their needs are, and you know the areas that they're struggling with, and you know which age level they're working in at the moment, because that's going to give you really key evidence for your application. On the SENIF, you will be asked to produce targets for the child. Good practice for targets is to make them SMART. What does this mean? S stands for specific. So the target will be specific to that child and to their needs. M is for measurable. So how are you going to be able to measure that target? How are you going to know when they've achieved that target? It might be through observations. It might be something physical that they can now do. A is for attainable. Ensure that the target isn't so broad that it's going to take them a long time to achieve it. Make sure that it's something that's within that child's reach. It might be something that they can nearly do, or they're certainly working towards. This leads on to R for relevant. It needs to be relevant for that child. It needs to be a skill that is relevant to their learning and that's going to help their development. And timely. So really thinking about how long that target is going to take for them to achieve. It's difficult to put a time on attainment, but if we're thinking about reapplying for the SENIF termly, that could be your time frame. Or if you're thinking about the plan do review cycles, they're 6 weekly, so that could be another time frame that you set for the target. But it's good to have an idea of how long you think something is going to take that child to achieve before you set it. When applying for SENIF, it's important that you have thought through what you would like to use money for. So there are a number of different things that you might like to use the money for. It might be that you would like to buy an additional or specialist resources, or to make resources, so thinking about the costs involved with making any resources to support that child. It might be that you want to adapt the environment, for example, building a ramp to ensure that access to the outdoor area is easy. You could also use it for staff training, so either for the whole staff or for one member of staff or the key worker to attend, for example, Makaton training. It might be that you want to use the money to buy in services such as a private speech therapist. Or it could be that you need to release staff to provide targeted support for a child. So those are just some examples. That's not a full list, but it just gives you some ideas of the sort of things that you are able to apply for SENIF to fund. In the previous slide, we looked at the sort of things that you might apply for a SENIF to fund. So it's really important when you're completing your application to think about the costings. So do your research about how much things cost. So for example, if you want to buy in some Makaton training, research how much that training would cost for your setting. Clearly lay out the costings in the application form so that it's really clear for the person reading the form what the costings are and what they're going to be used for. Remember that it's for one term. Ensure that the costings are realistic. It's not a bottomless pot of money, so it needs to be affordable. And remember that it's about the child's needs and how best to support them. So really thinking about what you need to spend money on in order to support them. Some children may also qualify for the Disability Access Fund, also known as the DAF. The DAF is available to early years childcare settings, nurseries and childminders, and can be used, for example, to support the setting with making reasonable adjustments. 3 and 4-year-old children may be eligible for the DAF if they meet the following criteria. So they need to be in receipt of Disability Living Allowance, also known as DLA, and that they're receiving universal or extended free early education and childcare entitlement. So the DAF is awarded to each child, but the applications must be made by the setting or the provider. And the parents might encourage you to do this, or they might not know about it, but you need to have their consent before completing the application. If an eligible child is splitting their universal hours across 2 or more providers, then the parent must nominate one setting to receive the funding, as it cannot be split between more than one setting. It's payable as a lump sum once a year per child, and at the moment the funding is at a fixed annual rate of £615 per child. Below is the link to the by-borough application for DAF. So if you think you have a child who is eligible, please follow the link and complete the application. We've nearly finished our presentation on SENIF, so I just want to give you our top 10 tips for a SENIF application. Use clear language, so make sure that in your strengths and needs section that you're using really clear language so that the person reading the application can get a good picture of that child through the language that you're using. Have a baseline assessment so that it's clear what level that child is working at in all areas of development. Gather evidence, so through your assessment, through observations, and through any professionals that are working with the child, any reports that have been written. The more evidence you can show regarding that child's need, the better. Work closely and collaboratively with their parents and with other professionals who are supporting that child. It really is a team effort. Be time aware. So be aware that you need to put things into place and you need to give them time to try and work. So we've looked at the plan, do, review cycle. You need to have that in place for at least 6 weeks. And don't forget that you need to reapply for the SENIF every term. Know the child's strengths and needs. This is really key. Knowing what they're good at, but what they need help with. contact your early years and inclusion advisor. We are here to help you. We're more than happy to support you with an application or just to brainstorm some ideas together. Use SMART targets when you're thinking about the targets in the SENIF. Have clear costings. Research, know how much things cost. If you want to buy in Makaton training, for example, ensure you know how much this is going to cost so that you can put together an accurate plan. And stay child focused. Remember, we're doing this for the child and to help support them to develop the best they possibly can. This slide gives you the link to the website where the application form for the SENIF is. So you complete the application form there and then you send it to the email address which is on this page as well. And again, if you've got any questions, please do email your early years and inclusion advisor. On this page are the links to the local offers for both RBKC and Westminster. The local offer pages provide a wealth of information and resources for you regarding SEND in the early years and in schools and what's available across both the authorities. So they're really, really useful pages to look at if you haven't already done so before. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this presentation. I hope that you come away with a greater knowledge of SENIF, how to apply and why you might apply, and that it might be useful for some children within your setting. If any questions have come up during this presentation, please do email me. My email address is at the beginning of the presentation, or contact your named early years and inclusion advisor who can advise you on those questions. Once again, thank you so much for listening.